Hey everybody, it's Charles here, and I'm going to talk about our book club book, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. And right off, I got to give this book an A minus. I actually really enjoyed this book. Uh, the premise is kind of weird, We just have this group of women who are held inside a cage, 40 of them, and they're just constantly under monitoring by armed guards who are walking around this cage all the time inside this lit room. They are given food, minimal food. They're given clothing and stuff. There are mattresses inside there that they have to sleep in, and this is the circumstance of their life. And they don't really understand why they're there. They have vague memories of being put into this place, the older women, but they don't really understand what the purpose of this was because they've never been told, nor they've ever been talked to. The child, the main protagonist or the narrator of this book, is trying to communicate her understanding of the world that they're in, but they're not really allowed to talk to each other other than basic nonsense. They're not really allowed to speak to each other. And it's a very engaging premise. I like that we really don't get a lot. There's nothing. This isn't like you go into a Western and, you know, or driving the cattle down the range and bang bang shoot and you pretty much understand who the bad guys and the good guys are. We really don't understand anything of what's happening here, and it allows the reader to completely supplant what is happening because they're clearly being held here for a purpose. We just don't know what that purpose is. And then over the course of the book, through circumstance, they realize how long they've been in the cage, which is based on the actual protagonist, that she was a baby when she was placed in here, and based on the time that they can figure out based on heartbeats, it's been 12 years that they've been inside this cage. That is how far they've been removed from society. And then through circumstance, they get out and they find the world that is just completely barren. There's just nothing there. There are no cities, there are no towns, nothing. Even traveling, they find similar circumstances all throughout the world. That there are just these underground bunkers with these cages, and they find them mostly full of dead people that have been abandoned. And we really don't know what happened. And so I like reading the book just like, okay, is it going to reveal anything? And it ultimately doesn't explain any of this. And if it gave me an explanation, or anyone really, it wouldn't be satisfying. I think it's being left so mysterious, so strange, that we don't even know if we're on Earth. We don't even know, have we gone to an alien planet? Was it something to do with aliens? Is it we don't really know what's going on? And I think that leads it to really an interesting set of discussions. Unfortunately, I can't really have them here because I wish I could be there with you folks and we could banter them back and forth. I like that she finally just fed up with women when they're freed. She's like, look, I understand there's no men here, but why can't I understand about men and about society and what it is? Why don't you just tell me what's the problem? Why can't I just know that? And that finally leads her to understanding of men and cycles and sex and all that other stuff that she would have naturally had explained to her in a regular society. The time going on is interesting. I find it unique when they talk about the making of like a miniature village, and they have to deal with people dying over time and what happens, and ultimately just down to the child herself. She's never given a name. I'm surprised she never gives herself a name. Perhaps she doesn't think it's important. And then she ultimately just goes on her own quest, and she finds all these other bunkers, and she finds this van. She finally finds something different, and there's all these similarly dressed people with this one book. And they had no books in the village at all, and finally she finds a book. And given her limited reading ability, she's able to read about, I think it's something about gardening, and she can't take anything from it because it's not valuable to her. Because you really can't grow things in this society anymore. Thankfully, all the bunkers have frozen foods and canned goods and stuff, though we don't really know why or how this whole circumstance happened. And ultimately, she finds a very rich bunker at one point, someone who obviously clearly had a lot of money. And also, all these have power, which is really weird. Like, how are they being powered? Why are they being so powered? And ultimately, she spends the rest of her life in the bunker and dies. I find it mysterious. I find it to be a very mysterious book, a really interesting explanation into people and societies, like how would you handle this situation? Like if you were in this situation, how would you handle it? How would you handle very specifically the act of not only being in those cages, but like if you got released and this is the society, the world you found, like what would you do? Like how would you handle this thing that is nothing but survival at this point, knowing that there would really realistically be no future anymore. Like there isn't a way to proceed forward. Nothing obvious anyway. I originally was upset at the lack of chapters, but given what we find out about the child, this makes a lot of sense. She can't really write in prose. She doesn't have that. She doesn't understand how grammar works or how to set up words because she really hasn't had formalized education. So that makes a lot of sense at the end of it when you take it all as a whole piece. Like, oh, that's why it's like this. So yeah, I really liked it. I gave it an A minus. What do you all think? Take care and bye bye for now, everybody.